And the discussions last week, probably the time we spent wasn't enough, and I think it prevented a lot of people trying to to have their views. But one of the questions that was raised last week was that why do Dalits ditch the Hindu? Why don't the Dalits ditch the Hindu religion? And which actually categorizes them into their various castes. Um, and I've given it some thought, and here is what my deliberation on that is. The so-called Dalits were never actually accepted into any mainstream religion, at least not on an equal basis. The Dalits historically were denied the skills of reading and writing and lacked the ability to study the various religions that were on offer. The Dalits are not a homogeneous mass, and they are divided into very many small groupings, and remain to be so. This has prevented them getting together and becoming an assertive force. Dr. Medgar tried uh, uh, getting in bed with the Sikhs, but was shunned by the rigid organizational structure of the Akal Takht, which is the Sikh governing body in Amritsar. He involved himself with the Hindu reformist movement, the then Hindu Mahasabha, and he wanted the Hinduism to ditch the Manusimriti side of Hindu, which contains and advocates the Varna system, the four castes. Doctor was from a Mahar community, the lowest section of the Sudra caste, generally an untouchable. Gandhi did not like the use of the word untouchable and coined the term Harijan, which was later actually rejected by the Dalits themselves. Gandhi would go as far as incorporating the Dalits into the lower fold of the Varna system, into the Shudra fold. But notably, however, he was not happy to incorporate them into any other of the categories, which meant that he actually opposed dismantling the caste system. According to Gandhi, dismantling the Varna system would destroy the type of Hinduism that keeps Brahmins in power. The Dalits would obviously follow the Hindu religion if they were given equal treatment. And Hinduism, there seems to be two aspects. I can be corrected on this, but there seems to be two aspects of Hinduism. One is the organizational of society, and then there is the other side, which is the spiritual side of things. When you talk in terms of, the Ramayana, how people interact with each other, and then there is the other side of things, which is the organizational. There's the spiritual side, and then there's the organizational side. So I think Dalits have, or the lower caste have been led to believe that Hinduism is their religion, uh, but they have their place in that religion. Ambedkar thought of joining Christianity, but was put off by the hierarchical structure of the church. He also thought of joining Islam, but eventually found Buddhism to offer more of a personal fulfillment. having said that, many Dalits have over the centuries in various waves abandoned Hinduism and converted to Sikhism, Islam, Christianity. The oppression, however, does not end for these sections for minorities, and the minorities are then subjected to religious persecutions. So, abandoning Hinduism is not necessarily the answer they find, I think. So, and then the question is, okay, why don't the Dalits follow Marxism? I think that probably would have been a simple solution, but however, it is not as simple as that. Dr. Melgar was worst with Marxism, with Marxist ideology, but was put off by the attitudes of the contemporary communists at the time. The CPI, Communist Party of India, understood class character of society, but it turned a blind eye to the caste divisions that prevailed within the society. And Ambedkar saw that untouchables were not allowed to hold leadership roles in the trade union movements, for instance. The workers' unions played an active role in segregating the workers into task assigns according to their respective caste. So, and this was happening on the shop floor, and the doctor was quite dismayed with that. So Dr. Melgar saw that not only there were divisions of labor in society, but that there were actually divisions of laborers. The communists, however, communists actually have never actually addressed the question of caste divisions in society and in the workplace. They have always assumed that come the revolution, caste divisions will automatically disappear. Even today, you will not find any Dalit amongst the leadership in the mainstream Communist Party. The caste question was, however, seriously debated by various Naxalite groups in the 1980s and the 1990s. They resolved to give special attention to the Dalit social section, as well as the women section and the Adivasis and the religious minorities. So they started to look at various other contradictions that can exist in society. The revolutionary communists believed that such contradiction cannot be swept under the carpet and must be given due attention if an effective revolutionary united front is to be built. The oppressed must be helped to analyze, understand the contradictions they face, and help to channelize their struggles into a revolutionary struggle. All these social sections have been asserting themselves and are facing reciprocal oppression. We see the Dalits, converts being hounded by Garba Vapasi gangs. We see Dalit Hindu women finding partners from other religions being hounded by love jihad gangs. Dalits and Muslim traders are trading in cow, buffalo meat produce are now targets of Gaumata. So all these individual, these categories, these social categories are actually targets of uh, caste oppression, even though they may have actually abandoned Hinduism itself. So land issue is a key issue for attaining equality, liberty, and fraternity. I think the socialist ideals. There is a growing movement in Punjab involving the landless peasants and land laborers. The revolutionary forces have taken up the issue that India laws allow 1/3 of unused land, unused government land, to be allocated to the scheduled castes and the scheduled tribes. After prolonged struggles in southern parts of Punjab, this is happening. Nearly 100 villages have organized to acquire that land, which is now being tilled as collective farming, much to the distaste of the local landed gentry and the corporate-led administrations. I give you that example to say that, it is not all, oppression, that there is actually um, a light there as well, that people are actually resisting and taking forward the struggles. And I just want to touch on something about the Indian electoral system, which is riddled with casteism. Although the caste divides exist in India long before the arrival of the British, it is they who were the first to keep formal records of caste that through conducting population census. This is perhaps why the Hindu lobby accuses the British of creating the caste. It was useful for the British to know the social structure of the society. Among other things, it allowed the British to play one caste against the other to exercise their rule. A case in point is the recruitment of Mahars, the low castes, soldiers, into the East India Company to fight the Peshwas, the upper caste army in Maharashtra. And the Mahars with the East India Company actually defeated that rule. And incidentally, there is a celebration of this defeat of the upper caste every year on 1st of January, which is now come to be known as the Bhima Koregaon incident. The British referred to the untouchables as the depressed classes and brought in measures of positive discrimination in their favor. When they moved to set up national federal structure, they introduced the term scheduled caste. Governments, and this was introduced as a Government of India Act in 1937. This definition was clarified in the Government of India Scheduled Caste Order 1936. The British and the Indian government continued with the scheduled caste and added to it the scheduled tribes. Dr. Ambedkar would have preferred to have seen annihilation of caste, but in the face of the strong opposition, had to settle for some protective reservations for the scheduled caste. There subsequently followed a number of further laws, but suffice to say really that there was a review of these scheduled caste and scheduled tribe laws, and the Mandal Commission was set up in 1990, which actually introduced another um, another category called the other backward caste, which are now known as the OBCs. So rather than actually um, abolishing caste, the whole setup of the constitution seems to be actually enhancing and actually reaffirming the caste divides, and much to the dislike of the upper caste, because now the scheduled caste, the scheduled tribes, and the other backward castes actually now constitute about 50% of the whole of the population. And the upper caste Hindus are actually up in arms about it, because they are saying that these guys are getting preferential treatment. Whether the actual reservations are actually put into implementation or actually implemented is another matter altogether. In fact, the four quarters are nowhere near ever fulfilled. But that doesn't stop the upper caste actually agitating against the Dalits themselves. Um, so I'm trying to address the issue. Why is it that the Dalits just don't walk away from Hindutva and 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 ditch it and become a caste, form a casteless society? This is not actually, it's a very complicated problem, and it's not that easy to do. Because if the Modi himself, uh, when he came to power in well, before 2014, he actually displayed himself to be a devout Ambedkarite. He played the OBC card, and he was thanking Dr. Ambedkar for, giving him the opportunity to rise to his fame, being a Chaiwala son. And these are the kind of tactics which the Hindutva has employed. They have managed to convince the lower ranks of Hindu society to believe they are actually Hindus, and they, like Modi, being a Chaiwala son, can actually become a prime minister himself. So, the Dalits have actually voted in large numbers and helped Modi come into power. Only later to realize that the Hindutva forces have actually turned against the Dalits, and now have used the Dalits to actually target the Muslim minorities, which we saw in the Gujarat riots in 2002, I think it was. And we also saw the Hindutva factions use the Dalits, or the so-called Hindu population, to turn against the Sikhs in the 1984 massacres in Delhi. So it's the Brahmanical forces are very, very clever in exploiting the caste divides and using it again, to instigate Hindus and Muslims against the Muslims. I just want to very quickly touch upon the recent happening last year on the. I think we need to discuss this as well. The Citizen Amendment Act and the National Population Register and the National Register of Citizens. This has been introduced by the Hindutva government, really, to again isolate the national minorities, and they're using, or they're trying to use the Dalit community, the non-Islamic community, to actually group against the Muslim minority and target the Muslims and create non-citizens out of Indians that have lived there for many generations. This has taken a very ugly turn, and we have seen unprecedented protest from people from all across the Indian societies against this move, which essentially is trying to establish Hindu dominations in India. And various people have been locked up and castigated for protesting against these laws. These are very dangerous laws that the BJP government is introducing, and I think we need to talk about that. The other recent event, I think somebody mentioned last time, was the Babri Masjid verdict. The perpetrators of the Babri Masjid demolition have been given a clean chit by the Supreme Court of India, saying that they were not at all responsible for the demolition and the hundreds of people, perhaps thousands of people that died as a result of the Babri Masjid demolition. So here is here we have a clear happening where we have the parliamentary people, the police, and the judiciary are all working hand in hand to actually further the cause of Hindutva agenda. And I just want to end up with this recent rape that has happened in the UP of Manisha Valmiki, where the Hindutva gang of four actually raped this 19-year-old girl, and the authorities want to actually brush that under the carpet and did not want any details of the rape to be made public. So they actually gone to the extent of actually, conducting her funeral in the middle of the night without any authority or agreement from her parents. This is causing a huge amount of upset throughout India. But this is the kind of dare the Hindutva government is actually doing these days. And just one last thing, I think somebody mentioned the link between caste and patriarchy. I do believe that there is a link, and I think the link is through Manusmriti, which is which maintains because Manusmriti has clear definitions of, you know, of how castes are defined, and what the role of patriarchs is relative to the females. And this is all part and parcel of the feudal structure of Indian society. And so long as the feudal structure remains, I'm afraid, I think we are not going to get rid of caste system and the patriarchal system. That's about all I want to say at the moment. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for continuing with a good presentation. Let us start the discussions now.
The Dalits do not exclude themselves from a particular religion to escape the oppression. But I think that, in a way, I've been thinking about it over the last week. But I think it is very difficult for the oppressed to escape oppression, because there's a huge force, and that is not just physical force, but it's actually social, ideological and everything else that goes with it. So it is very, very difficult for them to escape it. And I think, even escaping by conversions and things is, physically prevented. I don't think you just can't escape the caste system, as Lex said, that even if you change your religion, you would still be, in terms of the social hierarchy, you would still be in the same place. But having said all that, a huge number have actually escaped over the last few centuries, and that's why you have so many Muslims and so many other faiths in India. They're not outsiders.
I think Lake was responding, but his.
I know. Yeah, I know. Saif has something to say about this. I just want. I think I missed something out in what I wanted to say. If you look at, if Ramayana was written by Maharishi, was it Valmiki, and Valmiki was actually is classed as an untouchable. So to ask to expect that the Valmikis will abandon Ramayana, which is an almost a major part of Hindu philosophy, is actually telling them that they must disown Valmiki. So there are these complications why the Dalits cannot actually just walk away, because they do feel that they have an attachment. They do feel that certain parts of the Hindu philosophy is theirs. So just wanted to add that.
Yeah, so just brief correction. Last time I mentioned that Shudra was the wife of Rishi Atreya, sage Atreya. It was not Atreya, it was Atri. Atreya was his descendant. So Atri is one of the Vedic sages whose wife was Shudra. Her name was Shudra. And that came from Shuddha, the word Shuddha, that is pure. So the word Shudra in itself is not originating from something derogatory or something negative. Now, Lake mentioned one thing, that Shudras have been kept away from education for X number of years and so on and so forth, or Dalits or Ati Shudra, whatever we want to call them. One of the most important mathematicians of India, pre-modern era, was Aryabhat. If people know, the first satellite that India launched was named after him, Aryabhat. He wrote many fundamental things, including what we wrongly call Pythagorean theorem, or Pythagoras theorem. It was not done by Pythagoras, done by many other mathematicians, Mesopotamia, China, India, and so on. But okay, he did much fundamental work. His daughter did much fundamental work, was from Patna, what is now Patna, Patliputra, and he was a Dalit. His surname was Bhatt. The Brahmins now, or what you can say Hindutva groups for the past 100 years or 150 years, have been transforming him into a Brahmin. So they are changing his name from Bhatt to Bhatta, double ta. So ta and ta. Bhatt was basically a pitcher caste. Basically, what they used to do is they used to take water from one place to other place, and that was his caste. So this thing that the Dalits or the Shudras or Atishudras were completely separated from education, that is not correct, completely not correct. But okay, largely it is true. But then largely it is true that Indian society has been, or most of the societies, education was always the sort of the right of the rich and wealthy and the powerful. This thing. Now, just these couple of points. Now, coming back to the question that we were discussing, Lake mentioned whatever he mentioned, but the thing that the question that I posed last time was that why Dalits, there are 150,000 Dalits in this country, and in this country, they don't face the same level of oppression, the same level of violence, the same level of discrimination, pretty much nothing like that, which they face in India. So why are they still latched on to the Dalit and Sikh identity? And Lake mentioned a couple of important things, that is the emotional attachment to, and so on and so forth. And this is one of the things which we need to look into, not merely the emotional bit, but how the identity is constructed, how the Dalit identity, how Aryan Brahmin Hinduism is integral part of the Dalit identity, and that is how they sort of live their life with this particular identity, and breaking away from this identity is only possible if other sort of circumstance or sort of the framework, the social framework changes. It provides them a particular, it provides them particular sort of options, alternates. This is one thing. But then again, the question of agency of the oppressed is not there. I mean, I don't think any one of you is talking about why this agency is. I mean, Shudras are taken as animals here, who have no power to organize, no power to think, no power to rebel. Right? And if you disagree, then please tell me historically one particular rebellion of Shudras, in which Shudras, one major rebellion of Shudras in the past, whatever X number of years, X number of centuries, in which Shudras attacked Brahmins or Thakurs and so on and so forth. And there was a major battle between these two particular oppressed and oppressors. Do someone know about that? This particular kind of a physical rebellion that Shudras raised against Brahmins, or for that matter, the upper caste. Right? So simply saying that there are whatever X reasons, ideological reasons, emotional reasons, and so on, is not sufficient. I think it's a cop-out. It's not looking into, I mean, I think you all are, sorry, just one last point. I think you all are Marxist in some particular way, right? Or, okay, maybe not socialist, but the material conditions are not looked into. You are saying ideological, but doesn't mean anything. The present material conditions need to be looked into. What are the advantages Dalits have for being Hindus? What are the political, what are the material, what are the economic, what are the social advantages Dalits are gaining from being Dalits, being Hindus, and for that matter Sikhs, which is basically part of Hinduism, but okay, they are separating in some particular way. Yeah, that's it.
there's two things here. One is, you know, if we understand that in India, that Dalits cannot escape being Dalits, and cannot escape escape their identity, because their identity is actually defined by the society that they live in and not necessarily by themselves. And if they had the choice to actually move away and overthrow the caste system, they probably would have done that a long time ago. So the reality is that it is not that easy for Dalits just to say, I am not going to be a Hindu anymore, which is what Dr. Medgar did, 70, 80 years ago. And that's not got the society anywhere. So that is the reality in India. And then if you start looking at if you question why don't the Dalits in the UK abandon that? Well, really, Indians in the UK have a real big affinity to the society in India. And they travel backwards and forwards, and they haven't divorced themselves from India. And the other thing is, I mean, as a Marxist, I think, I as a Marxist feel that, I as a Marxist feel that there is this great injustice that is going on in India, and the injustice is the caste system. And as a progressive person, that we need to expose what is going on in India, and we need to condemn Hindutva and the caste system, whenever, wherever we get that opportunity. And if I can use the British legal system to introduce laws against the caste system here, and embarrass and try and create an international hoo-ha against the Hindutva ways, modes of operation, then I think it is a good thing, and we need to get other societies involved in it as well. We have just seen only this week, I think it was, that the Australian Parliament has actually started to introduce these kind of practices against that. So the more internationalize we can internationalize the caste horrendous practices, the better it is. So even though, okay, I've never really experienced caste discrimination in India, although I am fully aware that it exists. But as a progressive, just like you would condemn, the atrocities on the Palestine, from the Zionists. So, as a progressive people, as a human, you should also be doing whatever you can to expose the Hindutva caste discrimination. Thank you.
I think Surendra wanted to say something.
Yeah, it's quite disjointed, I suppose. In terms of, you're talking about, Zef, you're saying what sort of social movement has there been against Brahmins by Dalits? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm not saying that. I was saying there are social movements. Social movements have been there, but that doesn't mean much in context of India. I'll give you the reason later on. But what I was saying is that if you look at this dynamic of oppression and oppressor and oppressed, and try to fit it on Brahmin versus Dalit, on that particular sort of binary, then there has to be, because the oppression is so naked and so vicious, that there has to be some sort of retaliation against the Brahmins or against the upper caste. I'm saying in the history of 1,000 years or 2,000 years, whatever number of years you want to take, is there a recorded rebellion, armed rebellion against the Brahmins or against the upper caste by the Dalits? if we accept this oppression was, this binary was disjointed binary and they were oppressed and oppressors. I'm challenging this particular thing. I'm questioning this particular thing. What I am trying to say is that Dalits are fundamentally Aryan Brahmin Hindus who have benefited from this identity. And that is why they are stuck with this identity. They're not stuck. They are willing, they have agency, and they are using this agency in saying that we are this. Yes, there are particular things that they are demanding and so on and so forth. This.
Well, perhaps you can elaborate on that later. But in terms of, I remember in India, and you'll probably know better than I, but there was the women's strike many years ago. Was it the sweepers or something? But so they were of a particular caste, and doing a particular sort of job. But they had a strike, didn't they? Quite long-lasting strike against conditions of work, but they were a union, I think. So I suppose that was a caste and class sort of resistance there that was actually quite mobilized in those terms. I don't know what happened to that later on. And here in the UK, I think one of the strongest resistance here has been the separate temples that have been, organized by the Dalit communities, because that was one of the sort of central points of struggle, I think, where it was very clear that in the temples, in the Gurdwaras I'm talking about, there was a very sort of marked political struggle. And so that led to, the Dalit communities having their own temples and stuff. But yeah, so perhaps you can elaborate on what these political and economic advantages you think there are for the Dalits you're referring to, Seth?
So if
other people should contribute.
But you have suggested that Dalits like being Dalit. There is some advantages.
No, I'm not saying that Dalits like to be Dalit. I'm saying Dalits like to be Aryan Brahmin Hindus. And within that, there is a sisterly disagreement or bargaining rather. And there is a parallel here. I forgot, I was going to give you guys this particular parallel. I forgot it last time. I was going to forget it this time. Let Lake come back and I'll say. But please, Kalpana should go ahead.
Yeah. Shall I join? Okay. I think the way you're framing, sorry, Lake, your introduction was good. The way you're framing this question is has there been any sort of struggle? I think the struggle of Dalits against the oppression has been on different levels, and over the centuries, it's been on different. It's not just been necessarily armed struggle, but there've been all the various. I think I started saying that last time, but the conversion to Christian, to Islam, to Buddhist is a way of getting out of that system. So there's been quite large-scale conversions over the centuries in order to escape the hold. But obviously the Hindu authorities or whatever, Hindu philosophy and things, they've been counter progressive or so-called progressive reformists, I would call them, movements which recognize that this part of the Hinduism was wrong, unjust, and have tried to do various reforms. So the struggle has been, but not just by Dalits, but other castes as well. But I think, as Arundhati Roy says in her very good article, that the way the caste is organized, each caste has something to gain by being in that society, even though that might be oppressed by the caste hierarchically further up the ladder. So each caste has something, and Dalits were outside this, but economically and economically they have tried to fight. I mean, a lot of the landless laborers and things have tried to fight against that, and I would put that in, you know, some of that has been sort of organized armed struggle. Some of that hasn't been organized armed struggle. The whole thing about Naxalbari and things has been that there was some kind of alliance between the tribals and the Dalits. So I would put that as one of the fights. But I think the other thing is, it's, you got to think about, well, ideology is important, political forces are important, economic forces are important. Until recently, economically, the Dalits have been weak as well. So it's not just, you know, ideologically they have something to gain by being in this society, but economically they've been in a weaker position. That's where the class analysis comes in use. And I think that hasn't, you know, and it varies from area to area, but generally, economically, they haven't been able to organize either. So I think, you know, that it's quite a disjointed, even though we say it's quite a large group, it's in India spread and divided itself and not been able to organize. The other thing I think I wanted to was something else. Yeah, no, that's it.
So I wanted to say something. Saif, Naim says that surely Buddhism itself historically has been a consequence of the struggle against the caste system. It was eradicated from India. But also I understand this Bhakti movement again itself was a protest against
There's been a lot of reforms, yeah. There have been a lot of reforms.
Yeah. My next question
against
is
recognizing the caste being unjust. It's not just either or situation.
Yeah, so these could be interpreted. Another point I wanted to ask Lekhi is, how about the Periyar in Tamil Nadu? That also was an anti-caste struggle. I think I thought Ambedkar during his lifetime, his appeal was limited to Mahar caste in Maharashtra.
No, I think Pereira played a very big role in the fight against Brahmanism and caste system, and then it was followed up by Jyotiba Phule. And so, you know, over the years, over the years, you know, there was the Satnami movements, there was the you know, the Sikh movement. The Sikhs actually was a result of part and parcel of a rebellion against the Hindutva, Brahmanism. So over the years, there has been a continuous fight against Brahmanism in various forms. And recently, I think, you know, we in Bihar, you can see, you know, how the Ranveer Sena army has been defeated is probably too strong a word, but has been put down by the Naxalite movement there. And so there are struggles, there have been struggles against this form of, you know, so to suggest that Dalits are actually not rebelling because they themselves are Hindus, if that's what you're suggesting, Saif, I think is a little bit difficult to understand.
Saif,
knowing that, you know, throughout history there has been. Sorry?
And I am asking Saif, does he want to respond to that?
Yeah, sure. So the first thing is Naim's thing. Naim mentioned that Buddhism surely must be the reaction to it. Not at all. If you read Buddha's his own sort of even the oldest texts, he defines himself as Arya, and the Arya caste. This is coming from Vedic period. So the primary division between the people which are in migrants or invaders, whatever you want to call them, did was between Arya and Arya, or Arya and Dasa. And Buddha himself calls himself Arya. So, and the other things that he was talking, I'm coming to that, sure. The other things that you were talking about, the annihilation of sort of a caste, it was not exactly the agenda there. Yes, this has been projected by the Ambedkarites and so on and so forth later on, that Buddhism has been some sort of a rebellion against Aryan Brahminism. But it's not very clear from the original text. This is not very clear that this has been the case. Pardon?
People don't stick to text. They follow.
Yeah, that's the thing, that if we go back to the texts, oldest texts of Buddha or Buddhism, not Buddha, but Buddhism, we don't find that kind of a tone there, because Arya itself, the word Arya or Aryan, the plural of that, was a generalized word, and Dasa was more sort of addressed to natives and so on and so forth. Now, the example that I was going to give last time and I forgot was, if you look at the white working class or white English working class in this country, they have been supporting for a very, very long time, pretty much last 100, 200, 300 years, the imperialists, their class enemies. And in the last election, they have voted openly for, the Red Wall has collapsed. Corwin project failed. Why? Because the white working class people voted for them, for the Tories, for their class enemies, right? So why did they do that? It's very easy to say that, okay, yes, they were programmed by the media and Daily Mail and Sun and so on and so forth. Sure, there is an element of that. But this again rejects their agency. It basically portrays, if we say this, then this is an elitist position, and we are saying that these white working class people are basically idiots. And we, the leftists or whatever we are, we know the reality. And if these poor idiot sobs should look at the reality as we see the reality, then they will find their nirvana in whatever, Mr. Corbyn and so on. That didn't happen. This is the exact thing which has happened in the past X number of years, at least past 7 decades in India. That is, the Dalits have collaborated with their co-religionists to gain more power, to gain more economic benefits, to gain more social grounding and acceptance. And same thing is happening here, that the imperialist loot, the working class, the white working class in this country has agitated to gain more sort of share in the imperialist pie, right? So this is the example, this is the parallel that I wanted to give you last time. And my perspective is this. And now coming back to, we can talk about Ambedkar or Periyar. By the way, Phule was much before Periyar. Phule died in 1890 and Periyar was born in 1879 or 1880. I can't remember clearly, but something like that. So Phule was not following Periyar.
No, he wasn't.
Phule wasn't following Periyar. Periyar came later on. But Periyar is a very important point. Tom raised his point. It's very interesting, because Periyar was staunchly against Aryan Brahminism. And in the end, around 1847, he's writing about Ambedkar, that Ambedkar, watch out, Ambedkar, he's going to collaborate with Nehru. And he's going to destroy this particular movement. But the Periyar's movement or Periyar's whatever it was fundamentally quite different, qualitatively quite different from Ambedkar's movement. Ambedkar's movement was a collaborationist movement to gain more, a reformist movement. Whereas Periyar was much more harsher, much more clear in his understanding of Aryan Brahminism. That is, we need to create a clear boundary between the oppressed and unoppressed. That is why Ambedkar always rejected the idea of creating a Dalitistan. Whereas till the end, Periyar kept on talking to Jinnah that please give me support for Dravidian Nadu. And in the end, Jinnah had to write a letter to him saying that, look, I understand your sentiments, I understand what you are saying, but your own people are not probably ready for this. I can give you the support, but this is not going to happen. But Periyar fundamentally, qualitatively, was very, very different. Periyar's movement was fundamentally, qualitatively different from Ambedkar's movement.
I would agree with that.
So Naim has further written something. Shall I read it out? It is not
Please,
about
yes.
Buddha. The similarity is with Wilberforce, who himself was a beneficiary of slavery, but it was the slave rebellions that forced people like him to come out against slavery. He is implying that there was something that propelled Buddha. No, Buddha rejected Brahminism. You are saying he did not.
No, I'm not saying he didn't. There is nothing in early Buddhist writings that he rejected Buddhism. He rejected caste system.
Thomas, can I say something? I'm not a historian, and I'm not going to go into Buddha and everything else. But from the bits I know, okay, it looks to me, because India is not a unique place. All oppression and oppressors, there is always collaboration. There is always difference of interests within groups. There's not a distinct line between the two groups. There is always, it's a fluid thing. It moves up and down, and therefore you get collaboration. Our struggle against colonialism is full of collaborators. That's the history of any struggle. If you look at the working class struggles, it's full of collaboration in Britain and anywhere in any of the countries you look at, right? So it is nothing unique in terms of what is actually happening in India. It is very, very difficult to beat oppression, because oppression is imposed by power, right? And that power did not come about in 5 minutes. There's a huge history behind it, several centuries and, even thousands of years. It's been imposed on people, and it is very, very difficult to escape from it, because at the end of the day, everybody has to make a living and live, right? And that itself drives many of the people. People are not interested in the struggle. They, the things that forces the British working class to collaborate is not just that they think they're actually sharing the crumbs from imperialism. It is also the fact that if their houses are mortgaged, right? So if they don't go to work, they're not going to get paid. They're going to lose their houses. They're going to lose their jobs. They won't have a livelihood. They won't be able to bring families. So that's what's concern of most of the people are. And I think that you can't generalize that in this particular instance. It's an exceptional case where people are so entrenched that they won't even give up the faith.
I mean, that is what exactly you are saying, that people in this country, the working class people, are so much entrenched that they cannot give up their imperialist association. But you cannot apply the same thing.
People anywhere are
yeah, exactly. That's what I'm.
Every person, no matter who you are, all right, have to feed your family.
I completely agree with that.
I'm not your collaborator. Full stop.
That they are collaborating with their own enemies. Yeah. And this is what I was highlighting. In the context of caste. In the context of caste, this is what I'm highlighting, that the Dalits are benefiting from this particular identity.
Yeah, but that's not the Muslims in India, you can say. There are a lot of
benefiting from the Muslim identity. They're benefiting from the Muslim identity.
No, they're benefiting from the Indian identity, isn't it?
Yeah, sure. How are they benefiting? How are they benefiting? I mean, since you are a Marxist, I can give you the data. How are the Muslims benefiting? Since the partition happened, Muslims have been going down on every particular marker of socioeconomic progress. So you take any.
Are you saying that there are no Muslim MPs who belong to the?
Even the number of MPs is going down.
Well, maybe going down, but still they're there, isn't it? They're collaborating.
I don't know what does that
In
mean.
Kashmir, they've got a chief minister who's a Muslim.
Can I say something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the white working class voted for Tory. I think a lot of them voted for Tory because of the immigration, their race. I think the racism has got to do with it. You know, they're not aware. They're not politically. They're not class conscious. They don't have class solidarity, and I think they voted because they don't want immigrants, and you know they don't like Muslims. I think a lot of them, not all of them, but I think a lot of them voted Tory because of the the racism towards the other.
Can I
Yeah.
can I ask, like, I think thinking about what you said, that they're benefiting from the power. Why didn't a lot of the Dalits convert to Islam during the Mughal rule? Because they were the powerful
did.
authority at that
They did.
time.
They did.
No, but
Massively.
why didn't they in the large? Why didn't they wholesale convert to Islam at a time when it would have been beneficial?
They did. A very large number they did. I mean,
Yeah, I know,
if you look at the number of Muslims, I mean, if you look at the number of Muslims who came to India from Arab and so on and so forth, it was minor. Even Babur's army, if you think about Babur's army as the main sort of force, Babur's army was not more than 10,000, right? And before the partition, the percentage of Muslims in India was about 30%. I mean, depending on which way you go, 30 to 35%. Right?
So why don't you include that as part of the fight then? Because
no, I do include that. I completely include that. But Muslims are now different from Dalits. They're not Dalits. Those Dalits are gone. Those Dalits who basically rejected Aryan Brahminism are completely different from the Dalits who are still latching themselves onto the Hindu identity. You cannot say both of them are same.
You don't know. So you don't see that there is a potential for alliance amongst the Muslim and the Dalits now?
Not at all. Not at all.
Is that your point, Saif, that the Dalits have a vested interest in?
Not vested interest. Not vested interest.
No,
the interest is completely open.
A vested interest in so far as that they won't be seen as low as the Muslims?
In India, yes, that's absolutely right. I mean, if you look at any socioeconomic marker, whether it is education, whether it is wealth, whether it is facility of government jobs, and so on and so forth, and most important, the target of being a legitimate target of social and state violence, it is the Muslims in India, has been since partition. I mean, when the partition happened, 250,000 Muslims were wiped out from Jammu. Jammu was a Muslim majority city or region. 250,000 Muslims were wiped out. Hyderabad completely. I mean, there is a complete data on this. And people who collaborated with these forces, many of them were Dalits. I mean, now you will see, if you look at the data on research on Gujarat riots, forget about Gujarat riots, now the recent riots, the people who are members of 40% membership of RSS and BJP is basically Shudra, which is now we call backward caste, and so on and so forth, right? And this is not my data. You can check the data, you can search online and so on and so forth. So talking about this kind of a thing of poor Dalits who are being massacred by these Brahminical forces and so on and so forth, it's yeah, in 70s probably that was true. That kind of talk. Facts are quite different.
I want to make a comment on that one, Saif. It is very true that that in the last 30 to 40 years, if we make a distinction between the Dalits and the OBCs, right? And that is sort of the untouchables and the Shudras.
Shudras and yeah, correct.
if you make a distinction between the untouchables and the Shudras, and the Shudras now is what you have called, I think, what we would call the OBCs. The OBCs are the lowest strata, or amongst the Shudras, which is the lower strata of the Varna system. If in the last 30 years, it is absolutely a recorded fact, according to Anant and Thomas anyway, that the atrocities committed against the Dalits, the untouchables, has been at the hands of the OBCs and not at the hands of the Brahmins. So the caste oppression faced by the Dalits is not really from the Brahmin class or the Kshatriyas. But the Brahmins are quite happy to sit back and watch this oppression take place. The people who demolished the Babri Masjid were not Brahmins, because they are the la-di-da people. They don't come out to do this dirty work. But they use the lower stratas of the caste system to do that dirty work for them. But they also use that lower stratum of the caste system to actually persecute and the lower stratus of the untouchability, and they use these OBCs, other backward castes, when they want to actually instigate Gauraksha movement, you know. So the whole thing is a very, very complicated thing, and to suggest that they should, the Dalits should just abandon Hinduism and walk away is not as simple as it seems. Because like I said in my introduction, the Valmikis, who are the lowest of the low in the untouchable system, believe that their guru actually wrote the Ramayana. So they themselves actually feel that Hinduism is their religion. But because there are two aspects of Hinduism, like I said, the spiritual side of things, I'm not a Hindu. I'm not trying to convert you into Hinduism. I don't. But and there is this structural side of Hinduism. So there is this confusion. There is this, I don't know what the word is, that the Dalits are having to grapple with. And I as a Punjabi person who lives within the Sikh community, coming from a so-called lower caste, and forget about Hinduism there, within Sikhism, which Sikhism was supposed to have abolished the caste system, here we are, we have gurdwaras in Punjab where the Dalits get the food from one door of the gurdwara, and the upper caste get food from another door of the gurdwara. So the caste system seems to be there, whether you are within the Hindu society or whether you're in the Sikh society. So I think what we need to do, and I'm just going to finish very quickly on this one, what we need to do is to analyze and the caste system within the framework of who is the oppressor and who is the oppressed. And when you come to look at oppression and oppressor, then you start looking at the capitalist mode, the capitalist structure of society, the feudalist structure of society. Then you start to actually have, I think, probably a different perspective. If you just look at it from the caste and Hindu mythology point of view, then I get lost anyway, certainly get lost. But when you put it into the perspective of, the Advanis, the corporations, and the capitalists, and the feudal structure that maintains this caste system, then I think we might be on to, a better understanding.
Okay, thank you very much. We shall wind up our discussion. Thank you very much for participating. And what shall we have for our next week?